but I dealt with the issue of negation of self, denying to Barbadians the right to apply and to qualify and to find equal place in these jobs. But the Honorable Member for St. Michael South, he said in here during that debate, we have to look for the best minds and the best people. That's a damning statement against a population. So many years after independence and so many years after the institution of the University of the West Indies found life on this landscape. The best minds and the best people in relation to the CEO who was hired at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. You don't explain it like that. You don't extol his virtues, while seeming to say at the same time that the locals who applied do not fall within the category of the best minds. And that curious phrase, the best people, that is a serious damnation. That is a serious negation of self. And to suggest, as they did in BTMI, that these super people have descended to solve all the problems in health, it is a suggestion that has no foundation. And I asked the minister, even in his absence, while his junior is here, through you, sir, to tell the people of Barbados whether there's a system of application or a system of advertisement, a system of advertisement, that when a job comes up in the executive of the hospital, you first advertise among the hospital staff. And then you secondly advertise beyond the hospital staff in the Caribbean. And if you're unsuccessful, you then advertise in the Commonwealth. In your presence, sir, I asked the minister if that is not the policy. And I asked the minister to honestly tell this chamber whether that policy was adhered to. I asked that question and leave the answer open for the minister. But sir, there's an obvious deterioration of service at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. The members present in this chamber may argue that, but they will find themselves arguing with the senior minister who came here last week and admitted to it. So don't argue with me. Argue with the minister. On that hospital, I asked another question. Did the Queen Elizabeth Hospital enter into negotiations late last year, with the owner of a home for the homeless? I repeat, during late last year, did the Queen Elizabeth Hospital enter into discussions with the owner of a home for the homeless to house patients of the hospital? That is a question I ask of the Ministry of Health, and I ask it in all seriousness. And while the answer is forthcoming, do we understand the danger to which we were exposing, knowing now what we found out then during the estimates? Do we understand the dangers to which those patients of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital were being exposed when the hospital had negotiations with that home? No names, no names. I am not here to disparage anyone. During the budget speech, which we all must take seriously, in a buoyant economy, I read that government's Capital Works program extends itself to 3 projects I grew up in a Barbados, I grew up in a Bridgetown and saw the central bank sprout. The generation before me saw the Treasury building. Every generation in this country has seen substantial capital works programs in economies that were supposedly less buoyant than this one. Let this country now be aware that this government's capital works program involves the construction of the geriatric hospital, which is well underway from my observation. Don't know how many stories it is. Not as tall as the central bank. I saw the central bank go up. I saw Warren sprout, several government buildings up there. The generation before me saw the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. As I said, they also saw the Treasury building. In a buoyant economy, this government now visits the people of Barbados with the news that their outstanding contribution to capital works projects in this country is a geriatric hospital, a small geriatric hospital on Zone 1 or Zone A lands. And that the second project is an amphitheater. They had a Jackie Opel amphitheater down there at the post office. Probably took about 2 or 3 weeks to build, including the tiling if they have tiles. And that is the extent of government's capital works program. A geriatric hospital and a Richard Stout amphitheater. But for good measure, they add the dorms at the Barbados Youth Service. How amazing. In a buoyant economy. And that is the boast that we make. When we built central banks and Warrens and an airport in the late 1970s and extended the Bridgetown Harbor, built it in the late 50s, started construction in the late 50s, completed it and rebuilt it again, extended it. And in 2024, we are telling the people of this buoyant economy that the best that we can do with a government capital works program is to build a geriatric hospital with prefab walls. It's not labor intensive. And dormitories at the Barbados Youth Service. And a Richard Stout amphitheater, which can be done probably in 2-3 weeks with 2 masons and a couple laborers. And that is the extent of this government's capital works program in an economy that is so buoyant. I'm so proud of you. I am so supremely proud of you. And then the speech went on to have the temerity to refer to the private sector capital works program. And up comes Hyatt again. For the 5th time it is being constructed. That is this. So when I said at the beginning of my speech that hardship and suffering pertains for this country, I say based on the evidence, all is not well. All is not well in this country. It is not well, and that is why I've asked the Prime Minister to cut down on those expensive trips and pay some attention to this country and pay some attention to the poor and the middle in this country. All is not well. It is not well. And I go back to that government capital works program. Are any of you, dear ministers, honorable members, aware that those dorms at the Barbados Youth Service were mentioned in last year's budget speech? So that when people say they're not impressed on the substance. Let the social media sycophants have their run. If the Prime Minister stabbed their mothers, they would applaud. St. James Central. Shakespeare again. Shakespeare again. So we don't listen to them. If she stabbed their mothers, they would applaud. Reality is not what you think. It is what you experience. This country is not doing well. And somebody in this government must stand up and tell the people of this country the truth as to the state of this country. It is not doing well. Sports, community development, youth, and culture. I'm going to move quickly. I'm going to move quickly. While the Honourable Member for St. Thomas shows some late energy again, while the member is showing some late energy, I've never seen her up at this hour. You tired? You ain't tired yet. Coming at you just now. My generation and the generation of the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, she's a little older than I am, more beautiful than I am. No, you ain't more decent than me. We grew up in a Barbados that practiced community development naturally. I can say to the younger Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast that she doesn't know anything about the good old Barbados that the Honourable Member for St. Thomas and I know about. That people form clubs, and you, sir, people form clubs naturally. You went in the road, you started playing cricket, next thing you got a club. And next thing you're calling it a sports and cultural club. And next thing you're meeting in the school on Friday nights. And next thing you got a president and a vice president and a treasurer and a PRO to write to the advocate at the time. And then the nation in its early days. And these concepts of social organization were almost natural. Beg your pardon? Organic. Shakespeare student. Why you don't teach your colleagues there? Why you don't teach your Honourable Member for St. Thomas? Why you don't leave me alone? But the Honourable Member for St. Thomas and you and I, sir, came up in that generation where organization, community organization was natural, organic. But I sympathize with the Honourable Minister for Sports. It is a different era. And you can build a mini stadium around every corner. It's not going to create a club. It's not going to create a club. And that is not to criticize you. It's not to criticize you. But I repeat my suggestion today. I repeat it now. That the government needs to go to the heart of the problem, the social problem, of a lack of community organization, and to discover why young people are not coming into contact naturally with each other, and why they're not coming into contact with each other unless that contact is violent. And that is a problem that afflicts this country. It's a lot of hard work you have to do, and I promise you that these mini stadia will not solve the problem, or will not solve the problems that confront young people in this country. And I have seen many cases of hard courts with lights, and they're vacant. I have seen many cases of playing fields with all kinds of facilities, and they're vacant. As between violence and technology, there has been an exodus away from recreational areas in this country. And that's the reality. And whoever gave the idea that a mini stadia or a mini stadium will solve the problem of anomie and social withdrawal, that person must rethink their idea. They must rethink it and come to understand that there's a deeper problem confronting this society, a far deeper problem. And Minister, I wish you well, but I wish that some deeper attention will be paid to the issue of that crisis in the lives of young people. And this may ask a bit much of you, but I will ask it all the same. If my information is that the St. Catherine ground at Bayfield was fenced in, I want to ask this government, through you, sir, and this minister. I am no admirer of Ronald Reagan, but please tear that fence down. A recreational area must remain an organic part of a community. And a man, an old man who lives just up the road, he's walking to cricket on Saturday. He must not stare at a fence. He must walk with his little bench and come with me and sit on the mound. Who is he? Representative for St. Michael North, for St. Philip North. I've invited her to cricket so often. And she tells me she doesn't like cricket. I say it is not about cricket. It is, I have to be careful how I say this now. But come on, like, we hardly see two balls bowl. I come there with the fellas and we sit down and talk all kinds of things. When we see the fence now on Saturdays, it is a different atmosphere, Minister. That fence has destroyed not only the aesthetics, but the organic nature of the ground. And there are people at St. Catherine complaining tonight about the presence of a fence around the St. Catherine ground. And bleachers will not solve the problem, because when I go to St. Catherine with my beloved Spartan, we go on the mound. You mean I have to go through a fence now to get on the mound? Please tear down that fence, Minister. You could imagine this honorable speaker a few years ago, he walking into Spartan. He used to squat Spartan, you all know that? This gentleman here, good spin bowler in his time, never got me out.
You never could have honorable member. Please. Yes.
But he used to squat Spartan, you could imagine.
Just not, you got pass and back and come back. You're pretty. They come back. Honorable member. Please.
This is just a demonstration of the amount of power a speaker has. You know you can't quarrel with the speaker.
But it's a fact.
You can get locked up.
That is a fact. That is a fact.
You cannot quarrel with the speaker.
And both of us know that. Both of us know that, honorable member.
A speaker is never wrong, even if he's wrong. But I think the point is made, and I wish you well with your initiatives in relation to young people. The speaker and I, though, will not be attending those night games, the block competition. I will have to hear how you fare at the opening and the closing. I have some notes on public sector. I think I had made reference to them before. The question of the high level of retirement, early retirement, more specifically, the demoralization of the career civil servant by supplanting contractual workers at the top of departments. I repeat that. The general confusion that this government is causing within the public service, you all don't know it. Because your reality is that this is a happy country. Talk to the people in this country. While on the subject of careerism, I want to tell the Attorney General through you, sir, that the main problem, one of the main problems in the police force is the problem of frustrated promotion. Not allowances. You can pay allowances, that's not a problem. But when you have a constable after 39 years in the police force, 39 years in the police force, and he is so committed to his profession, to his vocation, to his occupation, that he fathers 2 children and both of them joined the police force. There must be some virtue in him, but he's a constable after 39 years. Something is wrong. And I think that police officers ought to be guaranteed promotion. There ought to be a guarantee of promotion in the police force. And there are 2 aspects of the police force that remain colonial. The question of promotion and the question of rank. And I see the government has attempted to make some adjustment to rank. I don't necessarily agree with the designation senior constable. I think it is small reward for the frustrated constable. Small reward. But the entire ranking system in the Barbados Police Service needs to be changed. And I speak with some little authority on that issue. I think the Attorney General knows that. And I speak with some little authority on the question of promotion in the police force. That it should no longer, the perception always is, that promotion becomes dependent on personal favor. Personal favor from those at the top. And that needs to change. I know they do have an exam, but at the end of that exam, every other policeman complains. Those who are not promoted always complain. And those who are promoted complain about the times when they were not promoted. And so this government that claims to be modern, this government that claims to be a part of a Republican dispensation, must relook a colonial system and change promotions and rankings in the Barbados Police Service. I ask the government to pay some urgent attention to that if it wants to deal with the problems in the police force. I promised that I would come to housing. And I am not happy, Honorable Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm not happy. And the people in Barbados should not be happy with the state of housing. And they're entitled to ask the question, what is happening in housing? I came up in a time when the old people would get on the bus or if they live close to town, they go to the housing authority and pay their rent. I know about that personally. We who lived in areas called landing schemes. We lived in many cases next to the housing area, but we were all tenants of the housing authority. Some of us paid for the land on which our chattels rested. Some lived in the government housing units. And we lived harmoniously. And that housing authority, now National Housing Corporation, served this country faithfully and well. And I will not prolong this issue. That we must be concerned that in this country, the National Housing Corporation, after giving years of good service to housing in this country, not only as a landlord, but as a builder. That it appears as if this government is dismantling the National Housing Corporation in favor of private interests. And the word PPP does not impress me. Public-private sector partnership. It is a sexy term, perhaps. Very sexy. Oh, it means so much. But there are people in that National Housing Corporation tonight who fear that they're not going to have a job in the near future. Because this government is on a trajectory of dismantling, or appearing to be dismantling, the National Housing Corporation, the successor to the Housing Authority, which serve honest Barbadians over the last 50, 60 years. And a few years ago, this government incorporated something called HOPE, H-O-P-E. And HOPE seems to be bringing despair to the employment rights of those in the National Housing Corporation. I sat in this parliament a few months ago on that side and saw a minister come to this place and vest public lands. Well, they became public lands after the vesting. But I saw a minister stand, a minister of housing or some minister, stand and vest lands in the name of a private entity. You can call it public-private sector partnership, PPP. You can call it whatever you want. I am not impressed. As far as I'm concerned, it is private. And it is private posing as public. And it is run like a private entity. There's no hope in hope. Hope has become one of this country's national disasters. Hope has turned to despair for the prospects for housing in Barbados. And I saw 20 acres of land acquired and put into the hands of Hope at Lower Burney. And that legislative act was preceded by a town hall meeting. And present at that town hall meeting were the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East and the Honourable Member for St. George South. I saw that. I saw that. And I saw lands at Lower Burney, Hanson Hill, call it whatever you wish, be invested in a company called Hope. And preceding that legislative act on that Tuesday was a town hall meeting on the Sunday in the constituency of the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East. I will not remain silent. This is the people's business. I produce the Financial Times. I am going now to even more sordid times. I can find it, don't worry, I will find it. You don't want me to find it. Your Honor, I anticipate your question as to whether I will make this a document of the House, and I answer in the affirmative. It is a letter from the National Housing Corporation dated the 30th of January 2024. It is written to the Chief Executive Officer, Acton, Worthing Corporate Centre, Worthing, Christchurch, Barbados. You know, I don't like calling names. Sir, I do not like to call names. I do not like to use the privilege of Parliament to appear to be exposing people to public ridicule. So I'm not going to call the name I know the public wants to hear the name. I know that my colleagues who do not know the name want to hear the name. I know that the people of Barbados in here and outside want to hear the name.